You're listening to the Health by Design podcast, and I'm your host, Ror Alexander, wellness architect and functional lifestylist. I spent nearly 6 years of my life on a journey through the ancient East to bring you the cutting-edge combination of modern Western health sciences blended with the time-proven ancient traditions, principles, and practices that have flourished through thousands of years across countless cultures, peoples, and nations. Join me and my many special guests from all corners of the globe as we aim to help you live stronger, longer, and better. So I'm here with Miriel of, what is it? It is By Nature. So is it By Nature Design?
By Nature Design, yes.
Okay. And you are a biophilic designer.
Designer, yeah.
So today what we're going to talk about is just what the heck is biophilic design? Because I say that word all the time and people have no idea. And then you hear like biophilia,
yes.
And it sounds very strange.
Yes.
So yeah, even though some of my friends are interior designers and even architects, they don't know what biophilic design is. So why don't we talk a little bit about what it is, where it came from, how it came to be, and what it's all about.
Well, I think a good place to start is probably to talk about biophilia in general. It's actually quite intuitive, but it's also sometimes a little bit harder to explain or define. But Edward Wilson in the 1980s, he's kind of been credited with coining the term biophilia in a sense. And what it means is essentially that we all have, as humans, have an innate fondness or love of nature or all things natural. So when we think about putting that into design, a practice of design, it's essentially the theory of reconnecting people. And I say reconnecting because, we were once all connected to nature more than we think. And it's not just a luxury, it's actually something that is physiological connection that we have with nature. So we can do that in many different ways. There's certainly different theories and practices regarding biophilic design, so it's quite open in that sense.
Yeah, there's no real strict rules to it.
No, there's no strict rules, and the thing that's, that we need to realize as well as designers is that nature can be incorporated into our buildings and in our indoor space in many different ways. It's not always, simply with plants. I think that's probably the clear design that when we, think of a potted plant on our desk or, a green wall in our space.
Yeah, those little glass balls that are so popular now in Vancouver.
Exactly, yes, terrariums. And they are just one form or one way that we can bring nature indoors. So I don't know if you've heard of Terrapan Bright Green.
Nope, that doesn't ring a bell.
They are an organization in the U.S. and they did a lot of research about how to kind of design with nature. And what they found is that there's essentially 14 patterns of biophilic design. Okay. And these patterns could also be, a physical connection to nature, bringing in water features, sounds, everything like that for your senses. But then there's also a lot of forms of natural stimuli, natural forms and shapes that you get, not just from having the presence of plants or a natural environment, but just in terms of mimicking, a natural environment. Are you
talking like circles over sharp edges and stuff like that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Even if you have, elements of wood in your, in your furniture, your designs, that can also emphasize nature, but even art, essentially.
Now, a lot of this sounds very much kind of like feng shui in a way. So would you say biophilic, because I'm a big feng shui person, would you say that biophilic design is kind of... is it kind of a westernized sort of answer to feng shui? Because, you've talked about water elements and wood and things like that, which feng shui is also very concerned with. And actually a big part of feng shui is, it literally means wind and water, because it's about living with nature. Would you say this is kind of a Western idea of that, but without the superstition?
I think I don't want to label it as a Western idea of design. And even in...
Well, because it's very big in Asia right now.
In Asia, it is also very big. I would call it more of a primal kind of
Okay.
Primal connection to design again.
Paleo design.
Exactly.
CrossFit should be decked out with these things.
But it certainly evolves from also connecting again with wellness, health, productivity.
Yep.
And I think that's where kind of the differences come about, or even the likenesses between the two practices. Where there's certainly other levels, though, of it, of course, in terms of designing.
Now, I guess we went back to the 80s. What was his name again?
That was Edward Wilson. Actually.
Now, was he the doctor?
He was a horticulturalist.
Oh, he was a horticulturalist. Because I do recall the story, where a doctor had noticed that the patients, this was in the 80s as well, that's why I wasn't sure, because there was a story about a doctor who noticed that patients would recover faster when they were placed in so people in the hospital had an operation, would recover, they said, 2 to 3 days faster than people who did not. And what he did is he linked it to just a window. So people that had a scene of nature could look out over the park. He found that actually recovered faster, and he started following it.
Absolutely.
So that's, from what I understand, that's kind of where one of the first kind of modern interests in kind of how nature can help us heal started to come from. Are you familiar with that story?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I thought so.
And there's a lot more research that's going into that, especially with healthcare or hospitals. There's one in Singapore, actually, Kotech. I can't remember the name right now, but they also implemented a lot of biophilic elements into the hospital, and it was actually a lot more open. Lots of garden spaces. They have a green roof where they're actually producing their own food.
Wow.
And they found that the patients there, they love it. And I've been to that hosptal, and I have to say, if I was, even if I'm not sick, I would enjoy being in that
Singapore
space.
really is on it. Singapore really is. I mean, I spent a lot of time there, and one of my favorite places to look actually at biophilic design is Singapore, because they want to be, they call themselves, they even say we want to be a city in a garden versus a lot of cities that say, they want to have gardens in the city. They say we want to be the opposite. So I'll put some pictures on here. There's some cool designs. Like you said, like this hospital obviously is one. I don't know what the name of the building is, but they got this one building where it's very oddly shaped. Like it's not a square building. It's all shaped. They actually have like force on every floor.
Yes.
And
it's
then
almost like a terraced.
Yeah, it's like a terrace. Yeah, it's a very strange. It's cool looking, but it's definitely different. And then even there in their airport, I think it's the new terminal, they have a full-out forest in there with this like vortex waterfall to create like the negative ions and everything like that.
And then there's the super trees and the
gardens.
The
super trees. What's
super
that?
trees and gardens by the bay. So they are
Is that by the
basically
marina on the bay?
Artificial structure.
Oh yes,
that was built
those
to
big things that
look like trees, and all the plants are growing within it, and actually all the waste is also being.
See, I've seen those, but I've never actually gone up super close to them. So that's right down there by Marina on the Bay, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that's by that big building that looks like a boat sitting on top.
Yes.
They have some strange stuff going on in Singapore, don't they? But it's an interesting city because they're only about all that's been built in the last 20 to 30 years. I mean, before that, if you look at Singapore 50 years ago, it was nothing.
Exactly.
But yeah, they're I mean, so much interesting stuff. Now, let's talk a little bit about so biophilic design. There you have small, like you said, you have small versions of it, and then you got gigantic versions of it. What are sort of some of the ones that you might see in Vancouver? Some ideas.
In Vancouver, a lot of it is just bringing in plants and everything into the indoor space because Vancouver's very urban.
Yeah.
So similar to Singapore, except very different environment.
Very different.
We do spend 90% of our lives indoors, which is a big challenge. To bring nature indoors. There's still a lot of green spaces in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it's missing.
Yeah, I know there wants to be a big park. Like they said, they want to have a park within 400 meters of everybody's house. That's a big one. Are there any particular? Are there any sort of examples of biophilic design that you can think of off the top of your head that are maybe indoor?
So we recently did, or I would say about a year ago, we did the Botanist restaurant at the Fairmont Pacific Rim.
Okay.
So we've worked with restaurants, we've worked with offices a lot of green walls. But this one in particular, and we're seeing a lot more, is more of an integration between preserved and live elements of nature. It could be trellises hanging from the ceiling, planters in the garden spaces, and other elements in terms of lighting, changing the lighting too, so that we could actually harness that energy that the plants need and everything like that.
So How does one get a background in biophilic design? I'm assuming do you like start off as an interior designer? Do you start off as a horticulturalist? Like, how does that go about?
Well, I think it's really a fusion of very, different practices. I came from the environmental side. Actually, I was more of a scientist before, so I was working mostly outside, understanding natural cycles. And then when I returned to school, which actually I studied in Singapore, it was a very new and different program, but it was integrated design. So you're working with project managers, architects, designers, and scientists, engineers, and you're looking at a building as a whole. So very holistic form of design. It's not just about having plants indoors, but what that does for the air quality, the circulation of air, the lighting, the comfort, the wellness, everything like that. You look at those different perspectives. So I would say, even if you're, an engineer, if you're, an interior designer, and you want to pick up these elements of biophilic design, there's certainly ways that you can do that.
Now, do you have to learn, because there's so many plants? I mean, like NASA has its top 10 list of ones that clean the air that a lot of people are familiar with. But I mean, like, you have ones that need full sunlight, ones that need darkness. So you must have to learn a lot about what kind of plants, because an office calls you in that says, okay, we have, we're in a basement, or one that says, we have tons of windows. So like, how do you start learning? Like, if you're a typical, designer and you're in school and you're learning your AutoCAD and stuff.
Yes.
How do you start? Where would you start to understand all the plants?
Well, that just comes from experience as well, I would say. I didn't know all of the indoor tropicals. So when you work in an indoor space, you have to know a lot of tropical plants. And also those that are available to you as well, that you can design with.
And I guess you'd have to know which ones are toxic too, especially if you're like, if you're putting them in a daycare, because I know there's plants that are toxic to pets
or even
and kids.
Pets. Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's even times when you have to design so that it's not in reach, too much in reach, especially with the moss that we have. Sometimes with children, they like to touch it a lot, and so you do have to design in those ways so that you can still access and view it.
No, for sure. Now, you see a lot of these green walls popping up everywhere.
Yes.
What do you think, like, how would somebody, if somebody wanted to start incorporating biophilic design, say, into their home or into their small business, like, what sort of stuff would you, besides calling you guys up and saying, come on and do it, where would you kind of suggest that's the easiest ways for people to normally start?
I would normally start with asking them, in terms of their lifestyle. How familiar are you with plants? How much of an experience do you want to have with those plants? Do you want to be very hands-on, or do you want to be, I want to, sit back and enjoy the plant life without having to take too much care of it. I know a lot in Vancouver, a lot of people have busy lives, or, they're in an office where they don't really have a designated maintenance personnel. We offer those packages and whatnot, those services, to be able to do that for them. But also we like to recognize essentially how much maintenance or how much care they want to put into it, and then decide from there which option is the best one for them. And then in terms of style and everything like that, because it's very cultural. Biophilic design has it's very cultural difference in terms of what nature we envision when we connect with it and everything like that.
Well, yeah, because I guess somebody, from a hot Asian country is probably going to be more into the tropical plants and stuff like that, where somebody who's more who's never been there, it's kind of foreign to them, where they might want more, there's somebody just like, we'll say Canadian, for instance, might want more like evergreen trees and stuff like that, and just the more mossy and sort of ideas.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I guess you would have, like, you were doing lots of, say, a native Canadian's place. There might be some elements of like that art in there as well. And
we have done a lot of different moss kind of art installations using, more native art. And then a lot of local kind of BC style adaptations of design and everything like that. So,
now, how has biophilic design caught on in Canada so far?
Okay.
I just did a post the other day on Facebook actually talking about the difference between Americans and Canadians. Not really to do with this, but I got friends and they have different startups, and they'll say, yeah, Canada just doesn't buy this and they don't buy that, and I'll talk to people, and it just seems Canadians are really behind a lot when it comes to modern trends in health. Like because I was in Asia for 6 years, and I worked in nutrition stores when I left, and when I came back, I walked into the nutrition stores, and I was like, I felt like I hadn't left. I was like, wow, there's so many designs. So many changes. Whether we're talking like things like biophilic design is one, but think like biohacking. The term biohacking did not exist.
That's true.
When I left for Canada, when I left for Asia, and I came back, but none of the stores are on that. It's like I felt like I walked back in time. So how has Canada embraced biophilic design compared to other places?
I had kind of the same thing. So I returned from Asia in 2014.
Okay.
And first, I the different perspectives. When you come here, you think, oh, Canada's very slow at taking up these things, but we have a much smaller population. We're very spread out.
Yeah.
And in terms of design, we don't really have that tropic environment where we're really living in such harsh climate. We're actually pretty lucky in Vancouver in particular to have this climate where we could
especially
be outdoors.
Right now in Ontario where it's minus 23.
Whereas Singapore, it's too humid. You don't want to be outdoors too much because it's too hot. And then in other provinces of Canada, it's just too cold.
Mm-hmm.
But I found, education is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once you educate those about their options or ways that you can design and incorporate nature indoors, most I find are very keen on doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's grown in even the last 3 years that I've been with By Nature. I find that the interest has sparked a lot, especially with designers and architects.
Mm-hmm.
They're interested in learning more. We do a lot of lunch and learns and everything like that to work together and collaborate a lot more.
So what's a lunch and learn?
A lunch and learn is where we go in during their lunch break to like an architecture or design firm, and we provide a lunch in particular, and then we show them all the different projects that we're working on and different options that they can design with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some other features then besides plants? You had mentioned some water features. What are some examples of water features that one would expect to see?
So similar to like a live wall, there's like ways that we can create kind of fountains and irrigate, or not irrigate just the green wall, but also have a water feature where it's actually in the air.
I've seen some of those. They're like
the
when you can like plug them in and there's like a waterfall running down your wall, sort of thing.
Yeah,
they're
there's
not
a lot of
cheap.
standalone walls. No, they're
not cheap.
But we're always looking at ways to innovate and create new products. So one thing that we are looking to do is work a lot more with furniture designers, product designers, and see how we can integrate different forms of lighting. I don't know if you can see the light fixture above you, but integrating plants in all sorts of different spaces.
Yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you was, you had talked about, besides water features and the other ones, you had mentioned wood. Because I've seen some examples about, because when I thought of biophilic design at the beginning, I thought it was just plant. But then you'll show these really cool structures they've built out of wood with all these like shapes have a lot. Like, can you explain more about the shapes and how shapes kind of work with nature and how we respond to them?
It's especially important even today because we're constantly plugged in, but just natural stimuli again. Seeing natural shapes, natural forms, natural materials. Even though this tree has been adapted into a table, to our eyes, it's still a natural shape and form. And actually, we don't really realize it sometimes how it makes us feel, but when we're looking at something that's more artificial or something that's built rather than, something that is more natural in nature, it actually changes the way we think and our productivity levels. It affects our moods quite a lot. And they are doing a lot more research into that. They're looking at say, for example, offices that have moved from a building that was, traditional building. It's boxed. It's got no aspects of nature or anything indoors.
Just harsh fluorescent lighting,
no windows, no views of
offices.
Green spaces, and then they bring them into a building that is. It's been changed, and you have views of nature. You have breakout spaces, places where you can just get away from the screen and view nature and the natural stimuli, and it actually has caused a lot less sick days and a lot of
because there's
less
a
stress.
lot of evidence that shows besides what we talked about earlier was the doctors. That was one like you said, that's been shown again and again that nature basically helps you heal.
Yes.
Productivity. That's an interesting one too, because a lot of people don't know it, but biophilic design is becoming very big with a lot of the big companies. Like I know Facebook and Google, Amazon, a lot of them are looking into this. Now, do you know about these biophilic spheres in Seattle?
Is that the ones at the Amazon?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can never remember. So it is Amazon.
It is
I
Amazon,
can never remember if
yeah.
it's Amazon or Google who it is. Yeah, because they've actually built these. Now they're kind of secretive about it, from what I understand. You can't seem to find out. But they're just these huge glass spheres that are like forests inside this big glass ball, and there's actually offices inside of there. So it's really interesting how much we connect with nature. And I guess that's one of the reasons, would you say that's one of the reasons biophilic design is catching on? Because for the last little while, that in the health and fitness industry, there's right now, and only started a couple of years ago, which is actually one of the reasons I moved back, there was a kind of this big push towards the holistic, the holistic sort of side, like even Weight Watchers becoming wellness watchers.
Okay.
I mean, so there's been a real movement towards the holistic side. Do you think that's because for a while there, kind of 90s and early 2000s, we just got so far away from nature?
We did, yes.
And we started kicking in like paleo diets and everything kind of went back to nature again?
Yes.
Is that something you would say the reason why biophilic design is kind of catching on now?
I certainly would. I think they're all connected. We're starting to look more at our health and in general and what we can do about it, whether it's diet, also design, everything in terms of our cycles, how we live in our lifestyle in general, right?
Yeah.
It's become increasingly important. So.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of research, like we were talking about off camera, we were talking about a little bit about like Dr. Sachin Panda, his book, The Circadian Code.
Right.
Now, do you guys, when you guys are talking to, I don't know so much with a company, but like at home, do you talk about circadian timing with people at all? Like, do you get into that sort of stuff?
Not so much,
not
but
so
I'd be
much.
interested in learning a little bit more about that and the biorhythms and how everything affects.
Yeah, because the biorhythms are really interesting. Because like it's in feng shui, really is a kind of a thousands of year old, and which is an actually offshoot of Vastu, which was the original, which is the Indian one. But the whole thing was about living within your circadian rhythm, pretty much, and it was all about sun and moon and sort of stuff. And then obviously 6,000, 5,000 years ago, they used very strange language, like chi and dragons and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it really is just living with nature. And I just find it interesting that we're coming back to this and so much more holistic, whether you're talking about biophilic design or like we talked to Kate, the wellness architect. And then you got guys now who are talking about EMFs and the potential dangers of EMFs and that sort of stuff.
We're almost rediscovering what used to be our lifestyles.
And I'm assuming you've heard of Shinrin-yoku.
Yes.
Which is, the Japanese forest bathing. Which brings me to my next point. I read Dr. I believe it was, I can't remember his whole name, but I think they ended with Lee anyways. I think it was Dr. Ching Lee. Okay. He wrote the book, The Forest Bathing. Okay. And one of the things that he noticed is when people go into the forest, particularly around evergreen trees, I think, the scent from the trees actually increased their white blood cell count. And what he did is he said, I wonder if we were to take this inside, really, so take these trees basically inside if this would happen. And so what he did is they used the essential oils, I guess, from evergreen trees. And people responded still, even at just the smell. Do you guys talk about aromatherapy or the use of that sort of odor scents when you're doing
so
design
it's
too?
kind of funny. Actually, one of our longest clients is Sage Wellness.
Okay, yep.
And they
the
work a lot with
aromatherapy
those.
stores, yeah.
So usually when we have our, we design our booths, we like to incorporate not just, the physical nature, the sounds as well, and also the smells.
Okay, so you guys could do sounds as well.
Yes.
What kind of sounds do you recommend?
Well, in particular, it depends. Once again, for me, I'm a water baby, so I love the sounds of the ocean.
Okay, so you like the waves.
Yes, I do. But we've had a lot of bird sounds in particular, especially for working with plants and trees.
Yeah, that's what I wake up to every day.
Yeah,
bird
sounds.
I basically have a Philips wake up light.
Okay.
It's one of those lights where it, basically let's say you want to get up at 6 a.m. So at 5:30, it starts to glow really, really light. Like you can barely notice it. And over the next 30 minutes, it goes up increment by increment, like every minute. And then if you don't finally wake up when the light goes off, which is unusual, you wake up to, you can pick different sounds. One of them is waves.
Okay.
And one of them is bird sounds. And then there's a river and stuff like that, too.
So I think probably the next thing is like living buildings, for example.
Yeah, let's
like
talk about living buildings. So.
Well, I mean, it's still new to me as well, but living buildings, of course, instead of the user kind of changing the building itself, the building is actually responding to the environment that it's surrounded by.
So how would that work?
So the windows can open up if the temperatures get a little bit higher in the indoor space. The windows can open up. It's almost like the building's almost breathing in a sense. And also, you talked about circadian rhythms. What about light?
Yeah.
If it's sunny out, we probably don't need as much of that artificial light on, and they can respond in that sense.
So would those all be?
Everything.
Are those like smart homes? Would that be all like Wi-Fi connected?
Yeah, it'd be
Could
connected.
be good and bad, I guess. That depends.
Well, then there's also a lot more houses too, which we try to block out any of those waves and everything, so that we can have our natural.
You guys, what? You do that?
We don't do that, but hopefully one day we can work and incorporate everything all together, so we understand all.
Do you guys work with, do you guys mostly do commercial? Is it commercial that you deal most with?
We work with both residential and commercial.
Okay.
But I would say it's more popular probably in commercial, just because in commercial offices they're mostly towers or very kind of. It's more of the built environment where there is a lack of nature. So a lot of our clients can benefit, of course, from having. Why
do you find your clients call you? Is it merely for the research on productivity, research on the health, or is it just more because they're interested in it? It's like their company? Like, what are the reasons?
It's hard to say the reasons why, but I think, it stems from people know that they want nature. They want to be connected. They want plants, and they want that in the indoor space. Whether or not it's because they feel like it's going to benefit their productivity or even their sick days, their business bottom line. There's many different reasons why. It's not always apparent. Yeah. But I would say that's of course a natural kind of instinct for them to have those plants nearby.
Have you done any offices where you placed like meditation spaces in them and stuff like that too yet?
We have worked with meditation spas and everything like that. So, and what I'm finding is it's actually coming from them a little bit more than it is from us.
Really?
They're kind of giving us ideas about, I want this space, They kind of know what they like, and we like to work with them to understand essentially what forms of nature do they want to incorporate into their space. Where
it seems to me this would be a no-brainer, and I don't know why. I could be wrong. Maybe they are doing it. Like you said, a lot of offices are doing it. You talked about a couple of hospitals, but old age homes. It seems like senior centers and old age homes would be a no-brainer for that. But I've never seen any yet. Have you worked on any yet that have?
We have had some inquiries for care centers.
Yeah.
They would love to have some green walls.
It just seems to make sense.
Yes.
I think you'd have happy or cranky old people, but B, you'd probably have a little less illnesses on them too. Because like you said, it inspires you to maybe move around a bit more. But I'm surprised more senior centers aren't picking up on this yet.
Yes, and I don't know why, but we go back to even hospitals and health. Even having a garden to tend to is so rewarding,
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, it's been shown. I mean, you look at the blue zones, and they're always, gardening's always a big one. They're always talking about the importance of gardening, which brings me to another point. Do you guys get into? When I had a podcast recently with Kate, the wellness architect, we spent a lot of time talking about kitchens. Have you guys done any kitchen design? Because I know this indoor herb and stuff is quite large.
Yes.
Have you done any of that in homes or restaurants?
Yes. Well, in particular, there was the botanist as well. They wanted some botanically interesting plants, of course, to kind of incite a little bit more about physiology of plants and biology of plants, to kind of allow people to think about those a little bit more, almost like you're in a conservatory of plants. But working also because they source a lot of local foods, they wanted to also incorporate an herb garden
Okay.
So that's something that we implemented in their outdoor garden space.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing about herbs is they do like a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult, and they do like a wintering season for the most part in order to keep them generating. So those are some of the factors. It is a little bit more maintenance involved with herb gardens. But.
Now, I do a little bit of sprouting at home, but I want to grow some herbs. Now, those, you know how you can go, you have a terrarium, like a terrarium for like your turtle or whatever. They have those long fluorescent lights, you know, that you can put in your terrarium. You could use those, I guess, for plants too, right? You could, because what I was thinking is I have this wood shelf, similar to the ones you have over here, but just smaller version, IKEA wooden shelves. What I was thinking of doing was, you know, having my plant tray and then screwing in some of these terrarium bulbs into there, so I can have some herbs all year round.
There are some units like that, and I'm working with some partners as well that have designed some ideas about how to, you know, grow their herb gardening inside and be efficient with the space as well. So you can build kind of more towers and have a system indoors.
Yeah, because a few years ago, I mean, it wasn't a thing, but now you can literally walk into, you know, Kane Tire, Walmart, even IKEA, and they have all these herb pot plants you can get that hang in your kitchen and stuff like that. So I just find it really fascinating how it's interesting. But yeah, we were talking about the kitchen of the future. Okay. And I was saying, I think the kitchen of the future, because really, the kitchen is the nourishment center of your home. For sure. I mean, it's obvious that's where you cook your food.
Yes.
So to me, it just seems a no-brainer that one would want to have a very natural kitchen that focuses on lighting and then focuses on, you know, growing your own herbs and stuff like that too. So do you have sprouts in your home? You got a living kitchen yet?
I used to when I was living in Montreal. Actually, I did have a whole garden. Yeah. Like kind of a rooftop garden.
Oh, wow.
And I love growing my own food. Here in Vancouver, of course, people's apartments are a lot smaller.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I do not have a rooftop garden anymore.
Yeah, no.
This is my garden.
Yeah, well, it's a good one.
But essentially, I mean, there's always ways to make it easier in terms of being able to grow your own food. And so we do have smaller systems, smaller units.
Okay.
Where you could actually just plant your seeds, and then there's actually a connected light. Oh, okay. So like individual systems now. And, you know, I think it's kind of a... You know, it might be in every kitchen one day.
Yeah. Well, have you seen?
Because we need a little bit more to be able to grow our own food a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. Have you seen this startup? I think it's on Kickstarter or whatever. You must have seen it because it's on Facebook. It's like the circular thing, and it's like you can grow your garden inside your kitchen. Like it's an interesting.
Yeah.
It's not cheap though. I mean, it's out there, but I think it's over $1,000 or something for that kit. I don't think it's.
Yeah, nothing's cheap. Ever really cheap when it first comes out. But you know, you have more and more people designing different ways that you can incorporate, you know, plants and herbs in your home. So,
what are some of the easiest plants for people to start putting in their houses right now, or the most functional? Let's talk about easy ones and then functional when it comes to air care.
Well, air care, spider plants are always really good ones.
Okay.
They do filter the air. And I would say spider plants are probably one of the easier ones to plant.
Because they don't need a lot of light either, do they?
They don't need a lot of light. Either do pothos as well, which are more of the... Pothos. So they're a trailing plant.
Oh, okay.
They tend to do really well also. Do need to be trimmed back, though.
Is that like the English ivy sort of idea?
No, there's the English ivy as well. They're a little bit more... They like shade a little bit more.
Yeah, those are the ones that tend to take over like your whole house if you let them. Yeah,
peace lilies, everything like that.
Yeah, I saw a peace lily at the mall. They have about $45, I think, for it. It was a big one. Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. So you could always start there. For those that don't have very much light, you'll see sansevierias or the zamioculcas, and they're very low light tolerant.
Okay.
Yeah, they tend to do well.
What are your thoughts on Himalayan rock salt lamps?
I actually have one at home.
Because rocks are a part of biophilic design too, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have one at home?
I do. I do have one at home.
Do you think it actually prevents all those EMFs from all over your house?
I'm not sure. I think maybe it needs to be bigger.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a lot bigger. Maybe if you stood right beside... I think maybe if you place it like right beside the Wi-Fi router. I don't know. But they're beautiful though, besides that. I mean, I have one too. I think they're great. But I think that a lot of the claims about how they, they fill your house with, what is it... negative ions. Probably a little overdone.
Which you also get from the water and everything.
Yeah, I think you'd probably be better off with more with a water feature. I think if you had a pretty decent sized water feature. So
and open your windows.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about too. Actually, I think the last two people that I've interviewed actually the Kate, I'm pretty sure we talked about that, and also we interviewed recently a building biologist, and everybody's basically open your windows. Try to have your windows open at least 1 centimeter if you can all year round.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, where can people then find out more about biophilic design? Like, where the average person would just Google it? Do you have any good resources?
Well, they can visit our website.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some explanations and examples of that.
Okay.
I find also there's certain, green architecture magazines in particular that produce a lot of interesting articles on it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have the Monitor as well, which is more on the green roofs.
Okay.
But a lot of
Sorry,
resources.
the Monitor? What's the Monitor?
Monitor is another
Oh, the
magazine that's
magazine.
produced by
Okay.
the green, kind of a green building organization
Okay.
in Canada and the U.S. And in terms of, finding the public, readers out there, I find that there's a lot more resources in the horticultural industry for biophilic design. So we just have to, get those articles and those resources out in general more to the public.
Now, have you heard of the WELL certification?
Yes.
Yeah, do you guys work with anything within that too?
We do, and actually all of us here at By Nature, we're going to be certified in the wellness certification program as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So that basically, for people that don't know, basically that's a certification where the older one was kind of not the older one, but the original was kind of LEED, right? Which is about building using sustainable materials and building with green materials. But now WELL actually takes place more about what happens on the inside. So it's so you have to be LEED, I think, and you can do WELL, which is it gets right down to the cleaners and stuff you use as well. So you guys are working on getting all your certifications and that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. Now, what is your website then?
Our website is bynaturedesign.ca.
Bynaturedesign.ca. And then I see your Instagram up there. You're at By Nature Design.
Yes.
And Facebook, would it be just By Nature Design again?
It's By Nature Design.
Yeah, pretty much all around.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I think that probably covers a good basics of biophilic design.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch on that we kind of missed?
If you ever have any questions regarding it, just reach out to us.
Yeah. And you guys, like you said, people can call you up for do you do consults?
We do consults as well.
Okay.
And that's a consultation.
So if somebody wants to bring a little more green or rocks or wood into there. Yeah, you want to get a little less sterile.
If you don't know where to start, you could always let us know.
Particularly if you own seniors' homes. Seniors' homes should be listening to this.
Yeah, or care centers, hospitals.
Because those places are depressing. I mean, they really are. I always just hear the beep of all the hospital stuff. Don't like it. Hospitals are a big one too.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference just to even have one plant next to you.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, huge.
When you're healing,
Yeah, great. Well, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ror.
Thanks a lot. You've been listening to the Health by Design podcast with wellness architect and functional lifestylist Ror Alexander. If you enjoyed this, please make sure you share it to all your social media so I can get the word out there. And don't forget to join me at www.roralexander.com to get all the latest updates, blogs, podcasts, and guest interviews with my special guests from all over the world, as well as to set up your own personal call for one-on-one coaching through my Health by Design life and body transformation programs. Again, that's www.roralexander.com. I'll see you again soon. And again, thanks for tuning in to the Health by Design podcast.